Morning!
Morning!
Welcome to the India Explained podcast, recorded in London and San Francisco. One take, unscripted, no rehearsal. Hey Bunty, good afternoon now from San Francisco, and hope things are good in London. I thought today maybe one of the things we can talk about is this incident where Arvind Kejriwal, Chief Minister of Delhi, his car getting stolen. By the way, San Francisco is a city where plenty of cars get stolen. I remember when I bought my car here, a new car several years ago, the insurance person telling me that your car is more liable to get stolen than crashed into or something. Now, the car was stolen in Ghaziabad. Apparently, it's been recovered since then. I want to have a discussion, or I'd be interested in your thoughts about this phenomenon in general. But I just want to signal a couple of things about Ghaziabad itself. Because my
Okay.
parents lived in Ghaziabad for a very long time, and believe it or not, at some point of time, according to some survey, if a local Ghaziabad paper is to be believed, it was in the top 10 cities of the world. So,
Good.
this place in Ghaziabad. So, no, let's take it seriously. I mean, why not? So,
Okay.
because, people in Gurgaon, who to me, Gurgaon, Ghaziabad are the same, but people in Gurgaon get very offended because Gurgaon is apparently the New York or something.
Can I tell you something or just
Please,
jumping in?
please. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
People call it Gurugram.
Oh,
I
it's
I
Gurugram
didn't
now.
realize that it was a Gurugram.
I think
I've
Haryana government changed the name. Yeah. So that's
Okay, okay. Anyway, sorry.
so yeah, no, not
Continue.
at all, not at all. So long story short, I mean, Ghaziabad, this area where my parents lived, is a part called Kaushambi. It's the part of Ghaziabad that falls into the what's called the National Capital Region. It's in UP near a bus depot, and there are other parts of Ghaziabad that are like badlands, kind of stuff you see in Omkara.
Yeah.
But not that these are like supremely good lands, but it was a nice place, and ironically, it was actually nicer maybe 16, 15 years ago than now. The idea was that these developers are going to build a bunch of these multi-storied buildings for NRIs who are going to return to India after some hypothetical boom that was going to happen post liberalization. Anyway, long story short, that never happened. They have several different officers' colonies there, and Kejriwal, who I believe may have retired from the Indian Revenue Service, he was there. But he was very active in residents' welfare associations and those kinds of issues. He did
Right.
do a lot of good stuff out there. I remember my mom saying that
Right.
she met him once. He was a very helpful person. He really was proactive in getting filth cleaned of the roads and all of that. And at some point of time, my parents' Maruti was also stolen. It was also
Right.
recovered, but some bums had taken it for a joyride and they had, boozed in it and stuff. So this is the state of it. But I think the larger question here is about just the state of law and order in the capital if the chief minister's car gets stolen. So those are a lot of like associations I've just thrown at this event, and maybe you can take it from here.
I think Rohit, one of the interesting things for me is the car was a Wagon R,
Ah,
right? Which is so the phenomenally interesting thing about Chief Minister Kejriwal or
huh.
Arvind Kejriwal from leader of Aam Aadmi Party is that he has spent the best part of the last 3 years trying to signal and kind of tell people that he is ordinary. He's
Hmm.
one of us,
Hmm.
and part of that
Hmm.
is I remember that he was against VIP culture. He was against and he still is against the whole lal batti thing. And we've done an
Hmm.
episode about this around how people like to do lal batti. So I
Hmm.
think the choice of vehicle, a Wagon R,
Hmm.
which is in the kind of scheme of things, as you
Hmm.
mentioned, your parents had a Maruti. My parents also have a Maruti, and Maruti is a brand
Hmm.
which when you own that car,
Hmm.
it signals to people that this person has got wealth proportionate to his ability.
Hmm.
It's not disproportionate wealth. I'm drawn by the idea that the chief minister is riding around in a Wagon R,
Hmm.
and what that signals in a city like Delhi,
Hmm.
where I have heard that if you draw up to a hotel in the wrong kind of a car,
Hmm.
you don't get treated with as much courtesy as you
Ab-
do
It's
when you it is
absolutely true.
so I'm thinking that obviously, whether you agree with this guy's politics or not, it's a very brave thing that he's doing,
Yeah.
is doing that now. So first the commendation bit, which is that a great initiative from a chief minister to strip the office bare of the vestiges of office.
mm,
Uh, Now then, the follow up to that is, given that in India public office
mm,
has such a lot of pomp and circumstance, as an experiment, when you strip away the vestiges of office
mm,
from the office, what actually remains? Because this guy, by the sound of it, is not a charismatic leader,
mm,
right? He's not a rabble rouser. So I'm just trying to think. So while you said let's talk about the law and order, where I want to riff on this, and we can talk about that, is how
mm,
in Indian public life,
mm,
what it means to be a leader. Because if you take away, the kind of coterie of followers, the sycophants, the needless chamchagiri,
mm,
and the vestiges, the tamasha of being a politician, the bartering of laddus, the showering of notes,
mm,
none of which this guy does.
mm,
What bereft of that? What remains of public office? Which goes back to your mother's initial experience of this man, which is basically a guy trying to do good, which is kind of the very starting point of what public life should be.
mm,
And full circle back. So the 3 points I'm making is this guy's has a very approach to public office without pomp and circumstance.
mm,
But what is his leadership style, given that in India, such a lot of political leadership is about projecting a particular view?
mm,
And why did the guys, whoever stole that car, why did they steal that car in a status conscious city like Delhi?
mm.
Why did a Wagoner get stolen? Because I'm sure it would have been parked alongside some other glamorous cars, and Delhi is like swathed in like cars of much more status and standing. So my question is, why did they pick that particular car? Did they know it was his car?
Well, very good questions. I'm going to respond to the points you've raised, the last one and another one. And I think one of the implications of what you say is that uh, if we judge politicians by their actions, you take the pomp and circumstance and the shoshebazi, as they call it, away, you'll actually find that there'll be a lot of politicians who have nothing left. And that's why so much of,
Right.
we know this generally of politicians anywhere in the world, right? So much of it is sort of image management, PR. But I think in the Indian case, maybe, this arrogance, this bluster, this theater of being an important person is so critical because if you take all of that away, then you see a very ordinary person, often a very weak person, and unprincipled person. Now, as you said about Kejriwal, I think one can make a lot of criticisms of him. Remember a senior editor, very senior journalist in the Indian, political media landscape, just wrote to me and once in a conversation and said that Kejriwal is someone who has no ideology whatsoever, right? So it may well be that he's power hungry, but I think along with that, and all the criticisms one can make about the limits of Aam Aadmi Party's vision, he has done some good stuff with the health clinics in Delhi and with the schools. The schools are actually doing quite well. He's really
Right.
sweetened up
Right.
some of the public schools. Otherwise, municipal schools had a very bad reputation. So in his case, I think there is still something to the man, whereas with a whole bunch of other people, there isn't. As for the question of why those thieves stole the car, I just think those were bums. I mean, my guess is that these are either some like kids who are out for a joyride, or some guys who probably are. I know this sounds classist, but likely from a kind of lower middle income background. And I don't think they wanted to. My guess is that these are not guys who wanted to get the car, strip it for parts, or any such thing, right? Which is what someone who runs a slicker operation might have wanted to do. I think that this is exactly the profile of guys who had filched my parents' car some years ago. That
Right.
these are some guys who they just want to go out, have a night of boozing or something. So they probably drove the car to Haryana and had some booze out there and probably left the dirty bottles in the car and just dumped it somewhere. That was it. So,
I think the one last comment that I wanted to make on this story was, apparently when it was found,
huh,
uh, the the technical term that was used when the
huh,
police recovered was that the car had been found in an abandoned condition.
huh, huh,
Right. I
huh,
find that the use of that phrase very interesting because
hmm,
so Shahibabad police station in Ghaziabad, it was found in an abandoned condition. Now,
hmm,
I think it's very interesting bureaucratic language because it is basically they found an empty car,
Hmm, hmm, hmm,
right? It's an unoccupied car like
hmm,
any other, right?
hmm.
Um, Later on, I'm just very interested by how people use language in bureaucracy. So it was an abandoned car as opposed to a stolen car that had been recovered, or it had been a car that was bereft of occupants. How did they know it was abandoned? Because abandonment signals that people ran away from
Well,
the vehicle.
I just think it was found, yeah, it was found dumped, right? Yeah, exactly. I
So,
think it's one of those Indianisms which,
yeah, yeah.
theatrical Indianisms.
Correct, correct. So, we've got this tendency with language to
Yeah,
try and say that, it is not waitlisted,
yeah,
it's a
yeah.
reservation against cancellation, which is
Huh.
this like funny phrase which
Yeah.
on train
I
travel
don't know what
RAC.
reservation. I actually don't know what that means still.
Neither do I, neither do I. So it's like abandoned situation. Anyway, but well, glad for Mr. Kejriwal his car has been found, and
Yeah,
I may his non-tamasha approach to public life
yeah.
continue. But obviously, from what I pick up, is he's good at some things as you've called out, but not the best at some other things.
All right. Well, I think that's a good note to end this on. So yeah, we'll be back in a minute with a couple of other episodes that we'll do today. Take care, Bunty.
ठीक ठीक है
Bye
चलो
bye.
बाय बाय